My name is Dr. Thelma Brown. For 40 years I have served as Dean of Humanities at a university where I helped shape minds, chaired tenure committees, published research, and received letters to this day from former students who tell me I changed the direction of their lives. Outside these walls, I am consulted, respected, intellectually valued. Inside my own home, I am interrupted, corrected, managed, not with cruelty, not with shouting, with something far more difficult to confront, a steady, polite, loving demotion. My husband, Othniel, passed away 14 months ago, and somewhere between the funeral flowers and the final paperwork, the tone shifted. The silence after 42 years of marriage has its own sound. Suddenly, my children no longer asked for my opinion. They informed me of decisions already made. They spoke slowly when discussing my future. They called constantly to check in. They praised me for small tasks I had been managing successfully for decades. I was no longer seen as a woman with wisdom to offer. I had become someone to manage carefully. From guide to project, this is my story. It happened in increments, the way the most significant things always do. At first, it was the interruptions. I would be mid-sentence, sharing a thought on a book, a memory from the archives, an opinion on something happening in the house, and my daughter would gently cut in. "Mom, we already booked the contractor. You don't need to worry about it." My son would nod. "We're handling the finances now. You just relax." Handling, relaxing. Words that sound like care. Words that feel like custody. I stopped offering opinions, not because I no longer had them. I have never stopped having opinions, and I never will. But because I learned, gradually and painfully, that my contributions were no longer received as invitations, they were received as inconveniences. Decisions were made without me. The garden redesign, the insurance adjustment, the holiday plans. I would find out through forwarded emails and brief texts. FYI, Mom. All set. I observed all of it with the particular discipline that 40 years of academia instills in a person. You do not raise your voice when you are being diminished. You document it. You understand it. You identify the pattern. And you wait for the right moment to reframe the narrative. Concern I had come to understand had slowly curdled into control. And the most painful part was this: they were not malicious. They were convinced they were helping. That is the hardest kind of diminished to name, because it wears the face of love. The breaking point was not dramatic. It was domestic. I was in the study, organizing Othniel's correspondence, a quiet Sunday afternoon task I had been doing in small portions, unable to rush it, unwilling to treat his papers as something to simply sort and store. I was reading a letter he had written to a colleague in 1987 when I heard them in the kitchen. My daughter's voice, low, careful, the voice she uses when she does not want to be overheard. Mom shouldn't be living alone anymore. A pause. Then my son. I know. It's just hard to bring up. She's so proud. Pride doesn't keep her safe, my daughter replied. We need to find a place, something with proper support, before something happens. I sat very still, pen in hand, Othniel's letter on the desk in front of me. I want to be precise about what I felt in that moment, because it was not what people might expect. It was not anger. It was not hurt, exactly. It was recognition. The recognition of a woman who has spent her career studying how institutions manage what they no longer know how to value, who has watched, across 4 decades, as brilliant minds were quietly moved aside, not with dismissal, but with accommodation, with concern, with the particular administrative kindness that is, in the end, another word for erasure. They were not being cruel to me. They were being institutional. And I had not spent 40 years building an intellectual life to be institutionalized in my own home. I did not walk into the kitchen. I did not cry. I closed the folder, straightened my blazer, and made a decision. If they were going to manage me like a liability, I would remind them that I was still the authority. I called them to the dining table that Sunday. No drama, just coffee and clarity. They sat across from me, my daughter with her careful expression, my son with his hands wrapped around his mug, and I looked at them both for a moment before I spoke, at the children I had raised, at the adults they had become, at the love in their faces that had, without anyone intending it, crossed the line from care into control. I overheard you, I said calmly. The conversation about living arrangements. My daughter's face changed. My son set down his mug. I am not angry, I continued. I am disappointed, not in your concern. Your concern comes from love, and I know that. I am disappointed in your assumption. I placed a red folder on the table between us. Not thick, just precise. This is my estate plan, updated last month with my attorney. This is my medical directive, signed, witnessed, and notarized. And this, I said, placing the final document on top, is a lease agreement for the guest cottage on the university's emeritus property. Fully accessible, fully staffed for maintenance, fully independent, and fully mine. I signed it on Thursday. I looked at them. You have been making decisions about my life without consulting me. I understand why. You are frightened, and fear makes people move quickly. But I am not a problem to be solved. I am a person to be included. If you want to help me, ask me what I need. Do not decide what is best for me. I let that sit for a moment. There is a profound difference between care and control. I have spent 40 years teaching my students to recognize that difference in the texts they study. I will not fail to recognize it in my own home. Silence. The honest kind. The kind that means something is being genuinely heard. Then my daughter whispered, and her voice was smaller than I had heard it in years. We just didn't want you to be lonely. I looked at her. I am not lonely, I said. I am alone by choice, and there is a world of difference between those two things. My son nodded slowly. We'll follow your lead, Mom. Good, I said, because I have spent 40 years leading. I am not retiring from it now. They did not leave that Sunday table angry. They left recalibrated. Not because I had shamed them. I had been careful not to shame them, because shame closes people and I needed them open. But because I had shown them something they had genuinely forgotten. That I was still the person I had always been. not diminished by widowhood, not made fragile by grief, not rendered less by the simple fact of having arrived at a certain age. Thelma Brown, still here, still thinking, still leading, still entirely capable of signing her own lease agreements on a Thursday afternoon and placing the documentation on a dining table on a Sunday morning. I moved into the emeritus cottage 6 weeks later. It is smaller than the house, but it is mine in a way that a house shared with inherited assumptions never quite manages to be. I have my books. I have Othniel's photograph on the desk. I have a garden I tend on my own schedule. I have students who still write to me. And now, I write back at my own pace, without anyone suggesting I rest. I have my authority, intact, unretired. If you are listening to this, and you have been quietly downgraded from guide to burden, I want to say something to you directly. Your mind has not slowed. Your worth has not faded. Your voice still matters. Do not let concern become custody. Do not let love become leverage. Do not let the people who care about you most confuse caring for you with controlling you, because that confusion, however well in intention, costs you something that is very difficult to recover. Your autonomy, your authority, your sense of yourself as the author of your own life. You do not have to raise your voice to reclaim these things. You do not have to become difficult or ungrateful or dramatic. You simply have to be clear. Clear about what you know. Clear about what you have arranged. Clear about who you are, not who grief or age or someone else's fear has temporarily cast you as, but who you actually, fundamentally, irreducibly are. I am Dr. Thelma Brown, Dean of Humanities, widow, mother, scholar, and I am not available to be managed. Wisdom does not expire because someone decides you are outdated. Dignity is not inherited. It is defended. Every single day, if necessary. With a red folder on a Sunday morning, and 40 years of knowing exactly what you are worth. My name is Dr. Thelma Brown, and this is my story.